Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Today's briefing was largely prompted due to some of the responses that I had seen in regards to the last couple of videos. It seems clear to me, at least from where I stand, that a lot of you had seen what happened at Ebenezer Baptist Church on Sunday, and as a result of that, some people are feeling rather low, but I don't like some of the things that I've been seeing that have been posted. So consider this to be something of a gut check. Today's briefing is about moral cowardice. And while this may seem like something that only affects other people outside of the black empowerment sphere, you might want to think twice. It's very easy for us to identify and call out the Raphael Warnocks and the Akons and the Stacey Abrams, mostly because these chumps are walking advertisements against themselves. But we have many more than them to worry about. We even have some people like that here. A question that everyone should be willing to ask themselves, and should not take offense if someone asks you, is whether or not you're built for this. Now, that sounds like a simple enough question, but it's not. I'm going to offend some people, but this needs to be said. We all know how Raphael Warnock brought Jim Crow Joe Biden into Dr. King's church. The congregation certainly knew that this abomination was going to happen beforehand, and not only did none of them do a thing to stop this perverted spectacle from taking place, but when Biden showed up, they all stuck around, clapping, singing, smiling, not showing the slightest displeasure at his presence. Joe Biden, the man who railed against busing, who was mentored by and praised rabid segregationists, the same people Dr. King was fighting against, the same Joe Biden who publicly said he wanted black children to be kept away from his children, and who voted for and even wrote laws specifically meant to target the black community, that Joe Biden was allowed to set foot in Dr. King's church. And not only did the so-called pastor not check Biden, the congregation didn't have the decency to turn their backs on him either. What a disgrace. You had a pastor who let the devil himself into the house of God, and the congregants didn't have the sense to walk out. Not only that, but they're all jolly and singing and smiling because this wrinkled-up racist Joe Biden visited their church and made a campaign speech. Raphael Warnock is a moral failure. Problem is, his parishioners have proven themselves to be no better. Yes, the congregation at Brown Chapel AME Church turned their backs on Bloomberg. At least some of them did, but here's my question. How many of those parishioners who didn't stand, who didn't protest Bloomberg's presence, complained at the ones who did? Because you know that's what happened. Oh, what y'all doing standing up? What's wrong with y'all? Y'all didn't need to do that. Y'all should have just let that say. Y'all should have just held your peace. Now, here's a question for you. Would you have been the one to stand and turn your back on Biden had that been you in that church? It's when you're put on the spot, when the white supremacists are standing right in front of you, that you discover if you're built for this. See, when Roly-Poly Martin had Richard Spencer sitting in front of him, and Spencer asked how did Roland identify himself, did he identify himself as a black man, Roly-Poly ducked, dodged, bobbed, and weaved around the question. And he's the same fool who will tell you and me about how he's been begging for a white media job. How he's spent so many years being a journalist. Oh, he's been in the trenches. Oh, y'all don't know how hard he's fought. He's right, we don't know, largely because we don't see him fighting. Well, we don't see him fighting the white supremacists, though he does spend a lot of time fighting us. So from the pulpits to the pews to the punks on white media cable, we're surrounded by people who claim that they're down for the struggle, who talk a good game about the need for a revolution, but the second it comes time for them to make their stand, they run. Now, before we go any further, let's be clear about something. When I say black empowerment, we're talking about the black grassroots, and we're not saying that if you're involved with the church or the mosque or any sort of organized religion, then you're part of the problem. That's not what's being said. That's not the case at all. We have a lot of people here who are Christians, Muslims, Hebrew Israelites, and everything else. And they are also with the program, because I see their comments, and a number of them I know informally. While it's true that religion can often be a barrier, a lot of the people you see here in this black empowerment sphere have proven that it doesn't have to be. And that also goes for when we're talking about non-DAS FBA black people. See, we got a lot of tethers and bootlicks around, but we also have a lot of family from the four corners of the planet, too. They see the problems, and they want to be a part of the solution. That's part of the reason why I make it a point to mention the names of some of the contributors with every video. It's as a reminder to everyone that we have a number of people whose names are clearly not DAS/FBA. We got sisters and brothers from the motherland and elsewhere whose involvement goes well beyond just posting a comment. We'll continue with the moment of truth in just a moment, but first, a word from the official sponsor of Black Empowerment, Power Tools. There's no telling when something's going to come up, so make sure you carry your power tools at all times. You never know when you're going to need to bring the hammer down, or when you'll have some trash that needs to be blown away, or some obstacle that requires cutting down. Don't get caught empty-handed. Keep your hammer close by. Keep that leaf blower at the ready, and always carry your steel. Power tools, because no matter what your day job or side hustle may be, there's no excuse for not being ready to put in some work. See, we got a lot of black folks all around the globe who see the problems just like we do. They understand that the heinous disrespect that the tether class has shown to us is also the same backstabbing that they did in their home countries as well. The loyalty system that the Africans and Caribbean family need is thoroughly undermined by these tethers doing these dirtbag moves. That's why I mentioned how the white media wants to copy black people's accomplishments and contributions to the culture so that ultimately they can claim they did it. Now, they've already pulled this stunt with music, and they've done it with inventions created by black people. The tethers are an invention of white supremacy themselves, so of course they also imitate their masters. The point that I and so many others are trying to make is that anti-black racism will not be crushed unless and until we leave it nowhere to hide. And the reality is the enemy has long since established a safe haven for anti-black racism inside of Africa and the Caribbean of all places. We're talking about lands where black people are the majority and are allegedly in control of the government. But the distribution of resources in those places is every bit as bad as it was under the Europeans and shows no signs of changing. We have to distance ourselves from people who lack the revolutionary spirit. And tragically, those people are very much in the majority. That's not meant to discourage you. It's simply meant for you to be realistic about the situation that we're in. There's not going to be a quick and easy fix to this. To overthrow white supremacy, we're going to need rock-ribbed, steel-spined, fire-breathing black empowerment soldiers. Watered down, lukewarm, only talk black when some white supremacists hurt your feelings, those are people who aren't really trying to slay the beast. Those are people who lack the revolutionary spirit. I'm not going to tell you to make a New Year's resolution about this because everyone's already supposed to be doing it. So I'll say to give yourself a gut check every once in a while. The people who want to overthrow white supremacy are not as numerous as the people who claim they want to. The talkers far outnumber the doers. But, as we've seen so many times, when people are put on the spot and they have to show whether they stand for justice or if they go with the herd, too many of them will say moo and mosey along with the rest of the bovine. Yes, we are a special people, but that's due to our actions. The reason we're simultaneously feared, hated, and envied is precisely because of what we do. Revolutions don't just fall out of the sky. They have to be born and nurtured and protected until they're strong enough to shake the world on their own. Not everyone has the revolutionary spirit, and we shouldn't waste any time with those who don't. The defeatists, the off-code, the lazy and cowardly and apathetic, they have no place among us. The old saying is true, attitudes are contagious, and when we have all these people running around with attitudes that only empower the enemy, I don't want them around me. The only thing they can do is teach us how to lose. Each and every one of us is supposed to be a one-person freedom-fighting cell for black empowerment. Be sure to keep your eye on these backsliders who don't have the revolutionary spirit, but also keep an eye on your own behavior, just to make sure that there's no bad habits that have creeped up on you. Though the very best way to make sure you don't lose your revolutionary spirit is to be actively doing things to promote the revolution. And that's an excellent deterrent in and of itself. Because the only thing these fakers, frauds, phonies, and fools fear more than white supremacist disapproval is work. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Melvinia Miles, Chaz, Raji, Maurice Soul, and Jean Floreval. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.